Trump slammed the table on live television. Jasmine Crockett didn't flinch. She stared him down, unshaken, and what followed cracked open far more than anyone expected. It was supposed to be routine, just another Capitol roundtable on ethics. Reform, live-streamed from a secondary chamber. 3 networks, a team of rotating moderators, the usual faces from both parties. The kind of panel that gets clipped into sound bites and forgotten by dinner. But that humid Thursday, something raw cut through the script. Millions were watching. None of them expected Jasmine Crockett to ignite the room with a single sentence. She'd waited through the usual monologues. When it was her turn, she didn't shift in her chair or warm up her voice. She looked straight at the president, seated across from her with his advisors and 2 visibly tense senators. Mr. President, she began, your language about urban districts isn't just careless, it's dangerous. These aren't just talking points to rile a base. People in my district are watching their neighborhoods change, not from policy, but from fear. The room stilled. Even the tech crew stopped scrolling. Trump leaned back, eyes narrowing. Crockett kept going. And every time you say our elections are full of fraud, you're not just attacking a system, you're attacking voters like mine. Working class people who don't look like you. Who don't live like you. And who are tired of being treated like background noise. For a second, everything held still. Then Trump snapped. You don't talk to me like that, he barked, slamming his palm on the table. Who the hell do you think you are? The moderator flinched. Cameras caught the outburst from 3 angles. But Jasmine didn't blink. Mr. President. She replied evenly, with all due respect, the truth doesn't require your permission. The silence that followed didn't feel like silence, it felt like a shift. Tension uncoiled in the air. The producers scrambled to switch to a wide shot. Too late. The clip was already everywhere. Within minutes, it hit Twitter. Then TikTok. Then Instagram. A 20-second video that moved faster than most press cycles. But it wasn't just going viral because it was dramatic, it was going viral because it was rare. A member of Congress had confronted the president, plainly, publicly, and hadn't folded. Later that night, political analyst Mark Shelley said on MSNBC, she knew exactly what she was doing. She wasn't just talking to the president. She was talking to millions of Americans who've been waiting years for someone to say it out loud. The White House issued a vague statement blaming media spin and insisting the president's reaction had been appropriate. But the moment was already out of their hands. For Jasmine Crockett, it wasn't damage, it was momentum. Overnight, her Instagram following doubled. Her Dallas office fielded over 700 emails in just a few hours, most of them thanking her. She was trending in 4 states. On Capitol Hill, the atmosphere shifted. Some lawmakers avoided her gaze. Others pulled her aside and quietly said, thank you. A few simply said, you were right. The impact stretched far beyond D.C. In Fresno, a retired teacher played the clip over coffee. She said what? I've been thinking for years, she told her daughter. In Tallahassee, a delivery driver played the clip for his coworkers. That lady ain't scared of nothing, one said. Heads nodded. The reactions were passionate, divided, and nationwide. Cable news ran with it by morning. CNN read, Jasmine Crockett confronts Trump head-on. Fox countered, Congresswoman disrespects President Lev. Lines were drawn instantly. Supporters saw bravery. Critics saw defiance. But everyone was watching. Talk radio lit up. Comment sections exploded. Morning panels couldn't agree, was it courage or a breach of decorum? Meanwhile, Crockett showed up for work like nothing had happened. Outside the Capitol, reporters waited. She gave them one sentence, I said what I said. My job isn't to flatter power, it's to speak truth for the people who put me here. By lunch, that sentence was on t-shirts being sold in Dallas. Her staff tried to shut it down. They couldn't. The phrase had taken on a life of its own. But backlash came fast. A conservative PAC released a heavily edited version of the exchange, cutting her calm tone, splicing her words to seem angry. Radical left Congresswoman melts down on president, the caption read. The comment sections were uglier, disrespectful, out of control, an embarrassment. The attacks escalated. Her personal email leaked. Threats followed. Her staff went into lockdown. Security at her district office was increased. Behind closed doors, a few colleagues whispered, had she gone too far? Some advised her to issue a soft apology. She didn't. Instead, she went on Good Morning America 2 days later and said exactly what she meant. I'm not here to tiptoe around truth just because it makes some people uncomfortable. If this country wants ethics reform, it starts with honest conversations, even the hard ones. She wasn't backing down. And the country wasn't letting go. In a high school civics class in Dayton, Ohio, teacher Robin Galen played the full clip. Jasmine Crockett, unwavering, confronting the president on live television. When it ended, one 10th grade student raised a hand and asked, why doesn't anybody else talk to the president like that? Robin didn't have a clear answer, but it wasn't just classrooms and coffee shops. By Sunday, the moment was echoing through barbershops, church pews, union halls, and book clubs. Some called it disrespect. Others called it leadership. In certain circles, it triggered a deeper, long-suppressed question: what does real accountability look like, especially when truth comes from a black woman in a system built to ignore her? Political scientists debated it. Pundits leaned in. Even late-night comedians took notice. Stephen Colbert quipped, Crockett didn't drop the mic, she vaporized it. The truth doesn't require your permission might be the line of the decade. But it wasn't the pundits that stuck, it was what happened next. In Tacoma, Washington, during a small outdoor town hall, Crockett took questions from a local grassroots voting group. After the session, an elderly woman named Evelyn stood up. Her hand gripped a cane, her voice trembled slightly. I watched you speak to that man like he was your equal, she said. Not your boss. Not your fear. Your equal. That's the first time I've seen anything like that in my lifetime. Crockett blinked, holding back emotion. Thank you, she said quietly. The applause lasted longer than expected, but while the cheers grew louder across the country, the mood in Washington was turning sour, and not in her favor. Inside the West Wing, tension simmered. Not chaos, just pressure. It showed in tight glances, in curt hallway nods, in back-to-back strategy meetings that dragged late into the night. By Friday, the clip was impossible to ignore. Senior White House staff were already deep into damage control, cycling through calls with network producers, trying to spin the president's outburst as passionate or firm leadership. Privately, they were alarmed. This isn't just a bad moment, Communications Director Dylan Reese said in a tense Roosevelt room meeting. It landed. He gets heated all the time, Chief of Staff Barry Lang added. But this time, it looked like she rattled him. She didn't just rattle him, Amanda Ridge, the press secretary, said without looking up from her tablet. She made him look small. Calm is power, and she had it. Across the hall, Trump was pacing in the Oval Office, refusing calls from party leaders urging him to move on. What really got under his skin wasn't the confrontation itself, it was how the country was reacting to it. Her name was trending. Her approval with independents had jumped 13 points in 48 hours. On MSNBC, she was being floated, jokingly, but still, as a future presidential candidate, she's nobody. Trump yelled at an aide. Nobody cares about those districts. You hear me? The aide didn't respond. Trump turned on OAN for comfort coverage, but even there the tone was cautious. Words like poise and composure were being used to describe her. Meanwhile, Amanda Ridge rewrote the evening press briefing notes. Don't mention Crockett by name. Keep the focus on ethics. We're not giving her any more oxygen. But the story wasn't dying. By Saturday morning, audio from the ethics panel room leaked, recorded by a sound technician who caught what happened after the cameras cut. Trump, still hot, could be heard muttering about uppity grandstanding and media bait. The words were called racially charged within minutes. They spread across social media in hours. Crockett said nothing. Her staff confirmed she'd heard it. Her silence only amplified the message. Inside the RNC, longtime strategists grew nervous. One called it a messaging disaster. Another warned that Trump's fixation on the incident was distracting from key legislation. And out in battleground states, Arizona, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, local organizers started getting a new question at town halls: is she running for something bigger? At the White House, Trump summoned a handful of loyal media allies. He wanted a new op-ed, something to shift the narrative. When asked if he wanted to directly address the incident, he snarled, "She doesn't get that. She wants attention? Let her bark on TikTok." The room fell silent. Amanda Ridge discreetly texted her deputy. This could spiral. That night, Jasmine Crockett sat alone in her Southeast D.C. apartment, working on notes for an upcoming university speech. Her phone buzzed, another anonymous threat, flagged by Capitol Police. She stared at the screen for a moment, then flipped it face down and called her mother. "They're going to keep coming now," she said softly. Her mother didn't hesitate. "Then let them come. If they're coming after you, it means you're finally making them nervous." Crockett smiled faintly. She believed it. But she also knew this wasn't a social media moment anymore. It wasn't just about standing firm. There were real-world consequences ahead, and they were just beginning. In a high school civics class in Dayton, Ohio, teacher Robin Galen played the full clip. Jasmine Crockett, unwavering, confronting the president on live television. When it ended, one 10th grade student raised a hand and asked, "Why doesn't anybody else talk to the president like that?" Robin didn't have a clear answer, but it wasn't just classrooms and coffee shops. By Sunday, the moment was echoing through barbershops, church pews, union halls, and book clubs. Some called it disrespect. Others called it leadership. In certain circles, it triggered a deeper, long-suppressed question: what does real accountability look like, especially when truth comes from a black woman in a system built to ignore her? Political scientists debated it. Pundits leaned in. Even late-night comedians took notice. Stephen Colbert quipped, "Crockett didn't drop the mic, she vaporized it." "The truth doesn't require your permission" might be the line of the decade. But it wasn't the pundits that stuck, it was what happened next. In Tacoma, Washington, during a small outdoor town hall, Crockett took questions from a local grassroots voting group. After the session, an elderly woman named Evelyn stood up. Her hand gripped a cane, her voice trembled slightly. "I watched you speak to that man like he was your equal," she said. "Not your boss. Not your fear. Your equal. That's the first time I've seen anything like that in my lifetime." Crockett blinked, holding back emotion. "Thank you," she said quietly. The applause lasted longer than expected, but while the cheers grew louder across the country, the mood in Washington was turning sour, and not in her favor. Inside the West Wing, tension simmered. Not chaos, just pressure. It showed in tight glances, in curt hallway nods, in back-to-back strategy meetings that dragged late into the night. By Friday, the clip was impossible to ignore. Senior White House staff were already deep into damage control, cycling through calls with network producers, trying to spin the president's outburst as passionate or firm leadership. Privately, they were alarmed. "This isn't just a bad moment," Communications Director Dylan Reese said in a tense Roosevelt room meeting. "It landed." "He gets heated all the time," Chief of Staff Barry Lang added. But this time, it looked like she rattled him. She didn't just rattle him, Amanda Ridge, the press secretary, said without looking up from her tablet. She made him look small. Calm is power, and she had it. Across the hall, Trump was pacing in the Oval Office, refusing calls from party leaders urging him to move on. What really got under his skin wasn't the confrontation itself, it was how the country was reacting to it. Her name was trending. Her approval with independents had jumped 13 points in 48 hours. On MSNBC, she was being floated, jokingly, but still, as a future presidential candidate, she's nobody. Trump yelled at an aide. Nobody cares about those districts. You hear me? The aide didn't respond. Trump turned on OAN for comfort coverage, but even there the tone was cautious. Words like poise and composure were being used to describe her. Meanwhile, Amanda Ridge rewrote the evening press briefing notes. Don't mention Crockett by name. Keep the focus on ethics. We're not giving her any more oxygen. But the story wasn't dying. By Saturday morning, audio from the ethics panel room leaked, recorded by a sound technician who caught what happened after the cameras cut. Trump, still hot, could be heard muttering about uppity grandstanding and media bait. The words were called racially charged within minutes. They spread across social media in hours. Crockett said nothing. Her staff confirmed she'd heard it. Her silence only amplified the message. Inside the RNC, longtime strategists grew nervous. One called it a messaging disaster. Another warned that Trump's fixation on the incident was distracting from key legislation. And out in battleground states, Arizona, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, local organizers started getting a new question at town halls: is she running for something bigger? At the White House, Trump summoned a handful of loyal media allies. He wanted a new op-ed, something to shift the narrative. When asked if he wanted to directly address the incident, he snarled, she doesn't get that. She wants attention? Let her bark on TikTok. The room fell silent. Amanda Ridge discreetly texted her deputy. This could spiral. That night, Jasmine Crockett sat alone in her Southeast D.C. apartment, working on notes for an upcoming university speech. Her phone buzzed, another anonymous threat, flagged by Capitol Police. She stared at the screen for a moment, then flipped it face down and called her mother. They're going to keep coming now, she said softly. Her mother didn't hesitate. Then let them come. If they're coming after you, it means you're finally making them nervous. Crockett smiled faintly. She believed it. But she also knew this wasn't a social media moment anymore. It wasn't just about standing firm. There were real-world consequences ahead, and they were just beginning. Before her name trended across headlines and social feeds, Jasmine Crockett was just a kid growing up in Mesquite, Texas. Her father worked nights as a bus mechanic. Her mother, a registered nurse, kept the home humming, organized like a command center, warm and tight-knit, never fancy, but always solid. Her first time speaking in public wasn't on Capitol Hill, it was at Mount Olive Baptist Church during Youth Day. She was 9, reciting a poem in front of the congregation. Her voice trembled, she mispronounced perseverance, but she kept going, head high. That part stuck. Politics wasn't the plan. Law wasn't either, not until her freshman year at Prairie View A&M, when a professor flatly dismissed her in class. Not challenged her, dismissed her. That night, Jasmine sat in her dorm room staring at an open book she wasn't reading. Her roommate Denise glanced over and asked, "You gonna let him shut you up?" "No," Jasmine said. "I'm figuring out how to make people like that hear me." She graduated in the top third of her class, went to law school in Dallas, and while her peers chased clerkships and cushy internships, Jasmine volunteered for a local housing justice clinic, defending tenants against no-cause evictions. She wore second-hand suits, drove a sputtering car, and often walked into court with nothing but a legal pad and a case file, but she kept showing up. By her early 30s, Crockett had become a trusted name in North Texas legal circles, not flashy, but relentless. Her courtroom presence was plain-spoken and direct. If justice wasn't being served, she didn't care whose feathers got ruffled. Then came the turning point. An old client, Arturo Benitez, called her in a panic. His teenage nephew had been arrested at a protest and charged with resisting arrest. Cell phone footage told a different story. Jasmine took the case pro bono. It didn't just get thrown out, it sparked quiet outrage. Her inbox filled. Her name circulated. People started saying she should end up. By the time she launched her campaign for the Texas legislature, she had built a following that couldn't be packaged into talking points. Her style was simple but sharp, statements backed by numbers, grounded in stories. She gave people space to speak at town halls, even when it ran long. Her staff complained. She didn't care. When she made it to Congress, some assumed she'd smooth out her edges. Instead, she sharpened them. She brought the same blunt precision to every committee hearing and policy fight. But she didn't chase the spotlight. She watched. She waited. Not out of fear, but because she knew timing was everything, and then, the round table, her staff knew something was different that morning. She was quiet in the car. In the green room, she skipped coffee, hunching over neighborhood crime stats from her district. At one point, she looked up and said, "They're not gonna like what I'm about to say. But they need to hear it." And they did. What made her confrontation with the president so powerful wasn't just her words, it was everything behind them. The legal pads. The town halls. The years of fighting small, unseen battles. Her files, still stacked in her closet, labeled by hand, evictions. Custody. ICE raids, even her allies in Congress hadn't expected it. Representative Colin Wexler, who'd co-authored voting rights legislation with her, later said, "Jasmine doesn't waste words. When she speaks, it's because she means it, and because she's got the receipts." But critics boiled it all down to attitude. To tone. They didn't see the path that led to that moment. They just saw a viral clip. Her supporters, though, they saw something else, a storm that had been gathering for years, finally breaking wide open in Dallas's District 30. What she said wasn't abstract theory, it was survival. It was cracked streets, buses that didn't show up, grocery stores replaced by liquor stores and dollar marts. It was precincts moved without notice. Voter rolls purged quietly. People being pushed to the margins, that was the world Jasmine Crockett spoke from when she challenged the president, not theory, reality. 2 days later, she flew home. No side entrance, no handlers. She walked straight through the main terminal at Dallas Love Field. A TSA officer nodded and said, "You shook him." Then grinned. He's not used to that. Outside her district office in Oak Cliff, a small crowd was already forming, some reporters, but mostly residents. She wasn't just a headline anymore. She was home. One woman in the crowd held a cardboard sign scribbled in bold black marker, "Truth don't ask permission." A teenage boy, shirt slightly wrinkled, approached Jasmine with cautious excitement. "Are you hiring interns?" he asked. She smiled. "Bring your resume Monday." Inside her district office, the phones wouldn't stop ringing. "We've had calls from Long Beach, Ohio, even Alaska," her district manager said, rubbing his eyes. "But it's the local stuff that's starting to hit." He handed her a short list. The voter registration office in Wilmer just slashed Saturday hours. The bus line serving 3 low-income neighborhoods stopped running after 7 p.m. 2 polling sites announced closures, citing budget constraints. Jasmine stared at the paper, then looked up. "I want to see every one of these sites. In person." So she did. No media, no entourage. Just her in an unmarked car with tinted windows. First stop, the Wilmer registration office. The woman at the desk looked startled. I didn't know you were coming." "That's kind of the point," Jasmine said. Outside, a man waved her down. Late 50s, Vietnam vet, cap pulled low, sun-worn face. "I don't do politics," he said. "But what you said, that was real. They treat us like we're dumb." "They're counting on that," Jasmine replied. "And they're hoping you stay quiet." He smiled. "Not anymore." Next was a shuttered polling location, once a middle school, now behind a chain-link fence. Officially, it was closed. For budget reasons. But the lights inside still worked. Custodians were on rotation. So why was the voting booth gone? Afterward, she stopped at Kenny's Spot, a no-frills barbershop with faded linoleum and worn chairs. No posters. No campaign stickers. Just talk. "They move the polls like we're not watching," an older man said as he got his haircut. "Then blame us when turnout's low." They want us tired, Jasmine said. They want us invisible, the barber added. Jasmine paused. Well, apparently I've been a little too visible lately. Laughter broke out. But then, quiet. A young man, maybe late 20s, looked up from his phone. Keep being visible, he said. My sister cried when she saw that video. She said you made her feel like she mattered. That silence hit harder than any applause. Jasmine stayed another hour, just listening. That was always her strength, listening to what people said, and to what they didn't. But when she returned to the office that evening, the air had shifted. A thick envelope from Capitol Security was waiting on her desk. Inside, updated safety protocols. Flagged threats. A memo advising her to avoid large gatherings without police presence. Her chief of staff handed it over. We might need to slow down. Jasmine flipped through the contents, then looked up. They want us scared. Yeah. Her aide nodded. Because scared people sit down. She folded the memo and tucked it into her drawer. Not today. But while support grew on the ground, pressure mounted in Washington, and online, the reaction had exploded. That 20-second clip didn't fade, it spread. By Saturday night, Twitter was a battlefield. On one side, teachers, nurses, organizers, and celebrities rallying behind the hashtag Jasmine held the line. On the other, critics flooding the feed with slurs, calling her race baiter, loudmouth, attention seeker. The hate came fast. So did the love. Jasmine didn't post a word. Her silence only amplified the moment. TikTok creators broke the clip down frame by frame. One from Phoenix zoomed in on the exact second Jasmine paused, letting Trump interrupt himself. That's strategy, she said. Not emotion. That's how you flip control without even raising your voice. Another user layered the now iconic quote, the truth doesn't require your permission, over footage of historic civil rights speeches. The comments filled with fire emojis, applause, and real questions. Why don't more politicians talk like this? By Sunday morning, artists began posting tributes, paintings, digital collages. One turned her quote into a spoken word piece set to jazz. Asked by a reporter why she hadn't said anything online, Jasmine simply replied, this isn't about trending. It's about telling the truth. Still, the internet kept moving. Influencers began sharing their stories, times they were told to be quiet, polite, grateful. One nurse from New Mexico wrote, I've worked 15 years in hospitals. I've never seen someone shut down a man like that, without raising her voice. That's not just political. That's cultural. But not all the attention was kind. By Sunday afternoon, right-wing media launched a smear campaign. Clipped courtroom footage resurfaced, carefully edited to make Jasmine appear combative or anti-police. One video, titled The Real Jasmine Crockett, ignored her years defending working-class families and instead labeled her as dangerous. Her office didn't respond. They didn't need to, because the more her critics pushed, the louder her supporters got. People weren't falling for the edits. They remembered what they'd seen. Live. Unfiltered, even late-night TV joined in. On The Daily View, host Laura Meta quipped, imagine being so rattled by a woman speaking the truth that you punch a table on national TV. Sir, calm down. She's not a Marvel villain. She's a Congresswoman. The crowd roared. But the tension still hung in the air. On Monday, a political strategist said on a podcast, this wasn't a PR stunt. It's a cultural crack. People are exhausted by polished lies. Crockett wasn't trying to go viral. That's exactly why she did. Back in DC, her aides quietly tracked the numbers. Engagement through the roof. Hundreds of thousands of new followers. Mentions in every major outlet, but Jasmine? She stayed. Off the internet, she had precincts to visit. People to meet. And a truth that wasn't going to tell itself. Overnight, Jasmine Crockett raised more small-dollar donations than in any previous quarter, without sending a single fundraising email. She hadn't asked for support. People just gave it, but the money wasn't the real story. What captured The public wasn't just her, it was how the system responded to her. And as the media frenzy started to fade, a new question settled in the air: what happens after the cameras turn off? Because going viral can make you a symbol. But sometimes, it paints a target. At an early morning strategy meeting, her communications director leaned in. "We're at a fork," she said. "Either we ride this wave or we pull back." Jasmine sipped her tea. "I didn't start a wave. I answered a question. What if they hit back harder?" She didn't hesitate. "Then they'll learn I don't scare easy." And she meant it. But while the internet was still rallying, her opponents weren't just tweeting, they were organizing at BY Tuesday morning. The knives were out. Not the kind that trend on Twitter, the quiet kind. The kind passed hand to hand in back hallways. The kind that don't make headlines, but end careers. Behind closed doors, Republican leadership had drafted a preliminary ethics complaint charge, conduct unbecoming a member of Congress. Basis: a disrespectful tone toward the President of the United States. The language was intentionally vague. But the message was clear: this wasn't about rules. It was about control. By noon, 3 GOP representatives from deep red districts had signed it. A carefully worded press release followed, full of phrases like decorum and civility. But between the lines, it was a warning Crockett found out while reviewing policy drafts in her office. Her chief of staff walked in silently and placed the paper on her desk. Jasmine read it, folded it, and set it aside. "Expected worse," she said quietly, but the pushback didn't stop. That evening, a primetime conservative talk show aired a segment titled, "The Rise of Radical Disrespect in Congress." The host ran the clip of Jasmine and Trump 3 times, then turned to the camera. "This isn't just about politics," he said. "It's about the erosion of respect, for authority, for leadership, for the presidency itself." The next morning, Crockett's office received a bomb threat. No device. No suspect. Just a phone call with enough detail to put her staff on edge. Security was tightened. Staff were instructed to travel in pairs. Jasmine was advised to limit appearances and avoid the Hill unless absolutely necessary. She showed up anyway. Plain black blazer. Same worn leather tote she'd carried since law school. She walked into a closed house session, sat through 3 hours of debate, and didn't say a word. Later, in a Capitol hallway, GOP Congressman Alton Briggs caught her alone. "You don't think that was a little much?" he asked with a half-smile as she looked him in the eye. "Too much for who?" Briggs chuckled. "For the room." She shrugged. "Then maybe the room's gotten too comfortable." He didn't respond. Later that day, she got a call from Representative Farrah Dillon, a moderate Democrat from Oregon who'd been silent since the round table. "They're trying to isolate you," Farrah said. "Leadership's under pressure to get you to tone it down." "Leadership hasn't said a word to me," Jasmine replied. "They won't. They're hoping you take the hint." "I don't do hints." Farrah paused. "Then be careful. This place doesn't always punish the loudest. Sometimes it just erases them." That night, The Hill published an op-ed, Jasmine Crockett, Courage or Chaos? It praised her candor, but read like a warning dressed in compliments. Behind closed doors, even some Democrats were getting anxious. Aides whispered that she should let the moment pass before it turned on her, but Jasmine had already made peace with the storm. What stung most wasn't the complaints or the threats, it was the silence from the people who were supposed to stand with her, still, outside the Capitol. Support only grew louder. Former civil rights attorneys, labor organizers, young candidates, they all sent public letters of solidarity. State legislators in Michigan, Florida, and Ohio quoted her now famous line, "The truth doesn't require your permission." On the House floor in Tulsa, a group of black high schoolers chalked her name across their school walkway, surrounded by messages like, "We see you. Say it louder. Do it afraid." Jasmine came across a photo during a late-night scroll. For the first time all week, her eyes welled up. She didn't say a word about it the next day, she just kept going, but even as she faced increasing pressure in Washington, something unexpected was quietly brewing behind the scenes, a twist no one saw coming. Late Thursday night, just after 11 p.m., an anonymous user on a niche political forum posted a single line, "There's a recording of Trump venting about Crockett in private, hand. It's worse than what he said on camera." At first, it was dismissed as noise. Unsubstantiated gossip. Just another internet rumor, but by Friday morning, the audio was real. Verified. Authenticated. And aired, first on a progressive podcast, then across national platforms. The recording came from a closed-door meeting 2 days after the roundtable. Trump was speaking with senior aides and 2 outside consultants. What made it explosive wasn't just the tone, it was what he actually said. "You let that woman talk to me like that on live TV?" Trump's voice, unmistakably irritated, crackled through the leaked recording. Where was the prep? Where was the control? "You people keep letting these nobodies make me look weak." Then came the pause. And the line that sent shockwaves through newsrooms across the country, "I don't care how smart she is. She's a loudmouth from Dallas who doesn't know her place. You think she scares me? Watch what I do to her career." That last phrase, "doesn't know her place," hit like a thunderclap. It wasn't subtle. It was loaded with history, dripping in condescension, and impossible to spin. By noon, media outlets across the spectrum had picked it up. For many, it confirmed what they already suspected. Trump wasn't furious because Jasmine Crockett was rude, he was furious because she didn't flinch. Some right-wing pundits scrambled to soften the blow. They called it out-of-context frustration, or locker room venting. But the damage was already done. CNN ran the leak on loop. MSNBC brought in cultural scholars to unpack its meaning. On The View, co-host Anna Pierce put it plainly. "He didn't say she was wrong. He said she was too bold." That's not a political critique, it's a threat. Crockett was in a car en route to Fort Worth when her press secretary handed her a phone. "It's real," he said. "They've confirmed the metadata." She stared at the screen. 10 full seconds. Silence in the car except for the buzz of traffic. Then she asked, "Has he responded?" "Not yet." She leaned back, exhaled slowly. "He will." He did. By that afternoon, Trump posted on Truth Social, calling the leak a violation of executive privacy and a desperate attempt by radical leftists to distract from their failures. He never denied the words. He just dismissed their weight. It didn't help him. It ignited the moment. Even more protests popped up outside the Capitol and in cities from Philadelphia to Austin to St. Paul. Homemade signs read, "We know our place in power. Truth needs no permission." Major networks begged Crockett for an interview. She declined most, but eventually, she sat down with 60 Minutes. The country tuned in. Across from veteran journalist Marie Reyes, Jasmine wore navy blue, no jewelry, no flash. "Congresswoman," Reyes began, "you've stayed mostly quiet since the leak. What was your reaction when you heard that line, 'She doesn't know her place'?"